Join us here on WLTX Plus. I'm Chief Meteorologist Efren Afante. It feels like we've been waiting forever, but we finally have it named. We now have Tropical Storm Imelda. Now, Imelda becomes now the 9th named storm in the Atlantic 2025 season. Well, we've already had a Category 4. Erin is a Category 5, as well as Humberto. But here's the latest. National Weather Service finally has Tropical Storm Imelda. The winds sustained at 40 miles an hour, gusting to 45. It's still moving very slowly to the north at 7 miles an hour. There's this position. It is just in the southern end of the Bahamian Islands. Still trying to get its act together. A lot of the activity, though, is on the north and eastern quadrant, so it's not a round tropical storm, but nevertheless, the winds are indicative that it still is. Tropical storm warnings remain in effect for all of the Bahamas, and then from pretty much just to the east of Key Largo all the way up the eastern coast of Florida up to Daytona Beach. From Daytona Beach up to Jacksonville and then into Georgia up to Brunswick, they currently have a tropical storm watch still in effect. Here's the guidance model. It'll stay as a tropical storm through Monday evening. At that point, the winds will get up to about 70 miles an hour. Monday night going into Tuesday morning, sort of the overnight hours, it'll start taking a little bit of a northeasterly turn into a Category 1 hurricane with winds at about 75, and then a really dramatic easterly turn, turning right, heading out to the east-northeast, still as a Category 1 hurricane all the way through Thursday, although the winds will pick up to about 90. I suspect it'll be a little bit stronger than that, but its trajectory takes it heading for Bermuda. Now, this cone is going to deviate a little bit more. So, you know, a lot of people do have here in South Carolina, have a lot of family members in Bermuda. And I know of some people who are vacationing right now from here in the Midlands that are in Bermuda. Well, the likelihood of this going directly at Bermuda, still hard to tell, but nevertheless, as a Category 1 hurricane with 90-mile-an-hour winds, it is undoubtedly going to impact that island. And even as a post-tropical, when it passes Bermuda, we're still talking winds that are in excess of 80 miles an hour. But the key message right now for South Carolina is it is a tropical storm, and its trajectory is going to take it far away from South Carolina, but not far enough. We're still going to have impacts. But the good thing is that not only is it turning away, but we still do not have any tropical storm watches, let alone warnings, that cover all the way up to Savannah, from Hilton Head all the way up to North Myrtle Beach. That is a good sign. So again, 40-mile-an-hour winds, sustained at 40, gusting to 45, moving north. Pressure, I always mention that, now down to 998. It's not strong, but it's below 1,000. And as it continues northerly, it'll start to strengthen a little bit more. And speaking of strengthening, well, this was the 11 o'clock update that hasn't been updated for the 2 o'clock as of yet. But nevertheless, Hurricane Humberto, at a point it was a 5, winds at 150, gusting to 185. Pressure is down to 934. It's well to the north of the Leeward Islands. There's Leeward Islands, I'm going to the wrong place, the Leeward Islands over by Antigua, Barbuda, there's Puerto Rico. Very, very symmetrical, smack donut right in the middle. Still a strong storm. As a Category 4, it is projected, though, to continue making its way towards the northwest. By Monday, it starts making a little bit of a northerly turn. Category 3 hurricane with 125-mile-an-hour winds. By the time we get to Tuesday, into Tuesday night, it starts making that almost northeasterly turn and then aggressively turning northeast, bypassing Bermuda by Wednesday morning, 105-mile-an-hour wind gusts as it really quickly takes off. In fact, we're looking at probably accelerating from Tuesday, forward motion, probably in the tune of about 15 to 18 miles an hour. But by the time it makes that right hook, it's going to be taking off close to 20 to 25. And by Wednesday into Wednesday night, probably accelerating over 30. So it's going to get out of here quickly. But as I mentioned in the earlier newscast and on the broadcast here on WLTX Plus, by the time it gets to Tuesday, Well off to the west is going to be Imelda, and Imelda is going to be dragged from the back through the course of Humberto. That's the great thing, that it is going to be pulling away from us. Now the impacts, well, there's still going to be impacts. We're talking about Monday and Tuesday. That's why we still do have a News 19 weather impact alert. Now we're not talking about hurricane issues. We're talking about rain and wind, considering how far Imelda is going to be. On the low end, most of our Midland communities could see as less as half an inch of rain. But as you go further east into the Midlands, especially through the Palmetto State, some low end totals could be about 2.5 inches. As far as the winds, here in the Midland communities, we could have wind gusts up to about 35 miles an hour. Up to. That's going to be at least a windy condition. And it is going to make for some hazards on the roadways, as well as the roads being a little bit slick with the repeated rainfall expected. Now, this is one thing that I wanted to show, because this is a very important factor to the rainfall that we're expecting. The vast majority, this pretty much covers all 46 counties in South Carolina, are under some form of drought. Coastal inland communities in the low country, not as much. But here in the Midlands, from Orangeburg into southern Clarendon, northeastern Lee County, are under a moderate condition of the drought. But the overall scope is that most of the state haven't had that much rain for the month of September. We have had quite a bit of rainfall in isolated areas over the last 4 days. It's not enough, even though this was updated on Thursday, it's not enough to get the ground saturated enough. With the amount of rainfall that's going to come down, it's basically pouring water right over cement. It is not going to absorb, and it's just going to spread out throughout the area. Roads, especially when you were talking about grassy areas and land, it's not going to have enough time to soak up. As of right now, the Weather Prediction Center still indicates that for Monday, the vast majority of the state has a marginal risk for brief and heavy rainfall that could lead to some minor flooding, especially when you have pockets of cells that are moving slowly or dump a lot of rainfall at one time. A slight risk, which covers pretty much for the far eastern PD through the eastern third of the Midlands, all the way down to the low country and everybody else heading towards the coast, there's a slight risk. So there's a better opportunity for not only more periodic chances for rainfall on Monday, but heavier amounts, and that would lead to some flooding. And especially when we go into the rest of the week, heavy rainfall could exacerbate some of the rivers, so we could have river flood warnings, and that would be for rivers that would be cresting into at least action, if not minor flood stage, that could last for a few days, because not only are we dealing with Monday, we're also dealing with Tuesday. Now, the marginal risk still covers a good amount of South Carolina, but for the Midlands, extreme eastern portions of the Midlands, and then into the Grand Strand and portions of the low country will have a slight risk. So even another chance for more of that rainfall. The good news is that Wednesday, that's it. We're not going to be expecting any more rain. So the rain event, not only do we have for tonight, which is really overnight, but for the next 2 days thereafter. Computer models from the Weather Prediction Center are indicating that for pretty much along and to the west of I-77, and we're talking about the Midlands all the way to the upstate, the amount of rainfall that is expected could top in the tune of maybe half an inch on the top end. Then you go to the east of 77 into portions of the PD, and then in the Midlands, the eastern half, and then into the low country, pretty much most of it, with the exception of you go squeezing a little bit more outside of the northern ends of Dorchester or Carleton County, and even into areas of Hampton and Jasper. There could be all the way up to I-95 upwards of 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches of rainfall. Once we get into areas that are coastal inland, all the way down to coastal Grand Strand, and then coastal portions of the low country could see on the low end 1.5 to the high end possibly 4 inches of rainfall. And that's entirely dependent on where Imelda is going to go. Now, it's a tropical storm, so we have to think of, are we going to have any wind problems? Tropical storm wind chances, very, very low. And if there's going to be any considerable chance for tropical storm wind gusts of over 40 miles an hour, it's going to be primarily right along the coastline. So the problem with that, fortunately, we're not dealing with king tides. If we were in the beginning of October, we would have a problem with king tides. But still, nevertheless, a lot of the channels from Georgetown, Charleston, even Carlton, Dorchester County could have a little bit of higher levels of waves and higher levels of high tide. So keep that in mind. But again, very low chance for a tropical storm force winds for all of South Carolina. And you can forget about hurricane force winds. If these are minimum, hurricane force winds are not even going to be an issue. The rip current, that's going to be an issue. As of right now, all of the South Carolina shores are under a low risk. That really is for the case of all of the Carolina beaches. A little bit of a moderate risk maybe when you get to areas from Wrightsville to Carolina Beach. But again, it's a moderate risk. As we get towards Monday afternoon and then through at least Wednesday, especially North Carolina and South Carolina, very likely we're going to be from moderate to a high risk. That will be the largest factor when it comes to wind and as far as the propellant of the hurricane making its way towards South Carolina. Here's the setup. This is the possibility showing in our in-house model. There's Humberto Monday morning. There is Tropical Storm Imelda Monday morning. This is what we're going to be tracking. As we go through Monday throughout the day into Monday evening, Imelda is going to track its way north of the Bahamas. Humberto, what did I say, Hugo? Humberto is going to continue moving a little bit towards the northwest. The key thing is watch their interaction as we get from Monday night through the overnight hours into Tuesday. Humberto starts making its north and northeasterly turn. Imelda is still making its way north. But a lot of people have heard this, and let me just define it a little bit easier. There's something a lot of you have heard, which is called the Fujiwara effect. It was named by a Japanese scientist, and what it simply comes down to, when you have two tropical cyclones, whether it's tropical storms or hurricanes, and they're this close, they will interact. And the guidance model is indicating that they're going to interact. With Humberto being the stronger one, it's going to take the strength out of Imelda and lessen it. But even more so, it is going to drag Imelda right behind Humberto. That's why Imelda's forecast has it making an aggressive right-hand turn to the east, because it's riding the coattails of Humberto. So by Tuesday night, Imelda now is well off the coast of the Space Coast of Florida, but now it's south of the Outer Banks. So it's pulling away from us. We still have the possibility of rain going through Tuesday, but by Tuesday night, that rain starts tapering off, and then there goes Imelda, there goes Humberto, and now we finally have this out of the way, and we're not going to be dealing with this anymore. And the key thing is that Imelda was Tropical Depression 9. It is now moving north at 7 miles an hour. Sustained winds at 40. We're not feeling the impacts yet, even though it's in the Bahamas. But all indications that as it makes its way towards South Carolina, by Monday night into Tuesday, is going to start making that north-northeasterly turn. And by Tuesday night, it is now making an aggressive turn to the right, heading pretty much east to northeast, taking off by Wednesday, getting out of here. But on the back end of it, we're going to get a little bit of the tropical winds. We're certainly going to get some rip currents out of it, and we're going to get rain that'll be starting overnight tonight, through the day tomorrow, through the day on Tuesday, and tapering off by Tuesday night, and we should be done. But that's going to be the focal point of what we're going to be expecting here in South Carolina. Now we're going to continue updated, more importantly, the continued impacts that we're going to have here in the Palmetto State and of course in our Midland communities. And we'll be updating this all throughout the night, all throughout the next 2 days, like we've been doing for the last 3. And we'll make sure that we get the information to you here on WLTX, on WLTX Plus, on our website, WLTX.com, and of course, on News 19. But for now, I'm News 19 Chief Meteorologist, and stay with us. We'll keep you advised.